Sari Bashi is a consultant at Democracy for the Arab World Now, and she joins us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Sari, thanks so much for your time. Now, we've seen that lengthy trial. We saw 30 witnesses travel from Iraq to testify. We've seen the verdicts. And now, we are talking about four men that illegally unleashed sniper fire on innocent men, women, and children. And now they get to walk free. What's your reaction to this?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program. I think that this pardon is emblematic of a very problematic U.S. impunity, especially when it comes to the deaths of people abroad. My heart goes out to the parents of those two little boys who were gunned down in the middle of the day just for being outside in a public square. I think that the U.S. Adventure in Iraq, first the invasion, later the occupation, and later the continued presence both of military personnel as well as security firms like Blackwater, have been marred by disregard for human life, especially when those human lives are Iraqi. And this pardon is doing nothing to try to ameliorate some of those wrongs.
Right. And what kind of an impact will this latest Trump's move have on the Arab world in general and the relations with the U.S.?
You know, the American invasion of Iraq further deteriorated a very bad reputation that the United States had in the Middle East, a reputation of adventurism, of not only funding and arming undemocratic regimes, but also engaging in regime change very easily and quickly, mostly to further American interests. The 2007 shooting was a low point in terms of the terrible reputation of the United States. In this case, Blackwater security guards, private security guards who were being paid millions of dollars to protect American diplomats, opened fire on a crowded civilian square, killing 14 Iraqis and injuring dozens of others. And I think it showed people in the Middle East that while the United States might talk about principles and human rights, in reality, it doesn't follow those principles. And it sends the wrong message to regimes in the Middle East, many of whom are also violating human rights. The U.S., when it engages in activities like massacring civilians and then pardoning those who were unusually convicted for it, it makes the U.S. much less credible in terms of trying to ask other regimes, like the Iraqi regime, which has its own problematic human rights history, to ask them to respect the law and to respect the rights of human beings.
Right. Sari, I want to go back to the victims' families. How do you think they will react? What can they do in this case? Can they do anything?
You know, there have been civilian lawsuits against Blackwater, and, maybe that can provide some measure of relief for the families. But this was a very unusual case, first of all, in that it was actually prosecuted by the American Justice Department, and also that family members flew to the United States to testify in these criminal trials against these four men. And they did so despite having very little faith in the United States because of what, at that time, 4 years of U.S. military intervention in Iraq had shown them. And, I must say I was actually surprised, pleasantly so, that these men were convicted, that there was some measure of accountability. And I think that it did something to at least maintain some kind of credibility and maybe some kind of relief for the families. This pardon is a slap in the face for those people who lost their loved ones. And it sends a very problematic message about what the United States values, that it values the lives of American contractors over the lives of civilians who were gunned down.
Right, it certainly does raise a lot of questions. Sari Bashi, I appreciate that insight for us. She's a consultant at Democracy for the Arab World Now. She was live for us from Ramallah.